I actually hit her in the back of the head, right where your spine is. Because he was telling me, he was like, if you hit right there, like just one like good hit, you can just knock the person out and then they'll be dead. And she was like pretending to be dead for a while. I would see that she was still breathing and I'll be like, Johnny, she's still alive. What the heck? And then like Johnny finally like made the like last blow, and it was kind of creepy because she was like scared.
This is Cassandra Bjorge, a 17-year-old from Georgia, sitting in an interrogation room across from two police detectives with a bag of fast food and a milkshake. She doesn't seem perturbed by her surroundings. Her bandaged hands and her prison scrubs are the only sign that she's in big trouble, because outwardly she seems casual and calm. But this 17-year-old isn't an ordinary 17-year-old. On an average Saturday night in April 2017, Wendy and Randall Bjorge, both 63, were found dead. They were Cassie's grandparents. They had been beaten with a tire iron and their throats had been cut, and they'd been lying there in their house for over a week, hidden from view of their neighbors on their well-to-do street in Pleasant Lawrenceville, Georgia. When the police are called to do a welfare check, this is the last thing they want to find. The bodies had been covered in bleach, and the doors in the house were sealed with caulk. This was a half-hearted attempt at covering up a senseless crime. Why had these ordinary residents of a quiet Atlanta suburb been beaten, tied up, and murdered? And what did their granddaughter have to do with it? Let's dive into the twisted story of Cassie Bjorge. The bodies of Wendy and Randall Bjorge were discovered after a series of welfare checks lasting several days. Family members had become increasingly concerned that they had heard nothing from the couple for over a week, beginning at the end of March 2017. On the evening of April 6th at 6:09 p.m., police knocked on the door of the Bjorges' house to check on their well-being. No one answered the door, but nothing suspicious was noted. Nonetheless, that evening, a COAP, meaning check often as possible, was requested for that address. So the police checked again the next day, April 7th, and again found no sign of the Bjorges. At 8:58 p.m. that evening, a missing persons report was filed by family members for Randall Bjorge. Randall was the son of Norwegian immigrants living in Utah, which is where he met Wendy. They were both born in 1954 and attended Highland High School together in Salt Lake City. They were married young in 1974 when they were both 20. Their marriage had lasted 43 years, their bond undiminished by time, and at some point they moved together from Utah to Georgia. Randall worked as a network engineer at Presidio Network Solutions, an IT consulting company, and earned a comfortable living. Their house on Furlong Run in Lawrenceville, a suburb of Atlanta, reflected his professional life and the couple's quiet existence together. They had adult children, Amanda and Christopher, and were close with their extended family, including Randall's older sister, Sylvia Bjorge Berman. It was Sylvia who was the last person to hear anything from Wendy and Randall. On the night they died, at the beginning of April 2017, Wendy texted Sylvia, "I'm going to bed soon. Maybe tomorrow will be better. All I can do is hope for the best and expect the worst. It shouldn't be this hard for any of us." What was she referring to? What was so hard in her seemingly normal life? The answer lies with Cassie, the couple's granddaughter. Cassie was born on March 18, 2000. In April 2017, she had just turned 17. She was the child of Wendy and Randall's daughter, Amanda, and the family had a tumultuous relationship. By 2017, she was being homeschooled and living with her grandparents in Lawrenceville instead of with her mom in Duluth because things had gotten out of control.
I stopped going to Duluth in 2015.
Okay.
Because that was around the time where like all this stuff was happening with my parents and stuff. And I started getting scared going to school because my stepdad would literally come on campus looking around the whole campus just to find me.
Cassie attributed her difficult situation to her intrusive, scary stepdad, saying she had to get a restraining order against him. Not much is known about this stepfather or his relationship with her mom, but her home life was bad enough that she was taken in by her grandparents. Wendy and Randall applied for custody in late 2015 and were granted it in 2016, so Cassie had been living with them for a year by the time everything went wrong in April 2017. But trouble had been building up for a while, and the move to Lawrenceville didn't fix Cassie's problems. Instead, it only brought problems into Wendy and Randall's otherwise peaceful home. Cassie seemed to attract trouble. By April 2017, she hadn't had a phone since December.
I haven't had a phone since December because my ex-boyfriend sold it. He told me we went to the Mall of Georgia one day and then I lost it. And then he said, oh, you might have lost it at the Mall of Georgia. So me over here thinking I lost it, and then I found out that he just sold my phone. So I was like...
Did you do some karate chops on him or anything? Or
well,
kick his butt?
he already went to jail before I could do anything.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
What Cassie might have done to the ex-boyfriend who'd stolen her phone, we don't know for certain, but it was an ominous precedent of the people she was hanging around with and the vengeance she might have displayed. On November 30th, 2016, a domestic call came into the local police department. It was just before 10 p.m. Wendy and Cassie had been arguing because Cassie, then only 16, had broken her curfew. This wasn't the first time she'd done something like this. Between October 2015 and the killings in April 2017, the police were called to the Bjorges' home 31 times. 18 of these were because Cassie had run away, while the remaining 13 were suspicion of illegal drugs or domestic disputes. This call was one of the latter, but it would end more dramatically than usual. As they fought, Wendy told the officer who responded to the call that Cassie had thrown water over her. There was water on the ground, and Wendy's pajama shirt was wet, as was Randall's. Randall had tried to get in the way of their confrontation because he knew what Cassie was like. Because, he said, Cassie had turned violent in the past, and today was no exception. According to Randall, she had hit Wendy multiple times. There was a small red mark on Wendy's arm, though there were no other bruises or signs of a physical fight. Cassie denied hitting her grandmother. The police officer didn't take Cassie into custody, but he wrote a report and forwarded it with a juvenile complaint form to the juvenile courts. In the report, he noted that Cassie had been vocal and disruptive while he was interviewing Wendy. He said, I heard her several times while Miss Bjorge would speak some smart-aleck remark, during which time I had to intervene several times to be quiet and not speak when an adult was talking. As a result of the incident, 16-year-old Cassie was charged with simple battery, simple assault, and unruly juvenile. Wendy and Randall were trying to cultivate a peaceful and calm environment for their granddaughter, and yet her behavioral problems were only getting worse. She was reported missing twice after the domestic call, once on December 18, 2016, when she was still 16. Wendy posted on Facebook on January 5th that she had come home safely, but she went missing again on April 1st, and Wendy's final public Facebook post is a desperate plea for her granddaughter's safety. Please spread the word. Please be on the lookout for Cassie.
I guess let's start from scratch about what happened, starting from when you ran away, I guess.
I didn't really run away. My grandma kicked me out.
Okay.
And I came home because, it was time for curfew because I didn't want to violate my probation. So I came home and my grandpa was asleep and my grandma got really mad at me and she was saying oh, if you don't like it here, we're just going to find somewhere else for you to stay.
Things had reached the breaking point in the Bjorge household, and Cassie took off. This was the last time Wendy and Randall would see her until that fateful night when they tragically and horribly lost their lives. Cassie had a habit of running off, and she'd made a routine of it. She would go and stay with her boyfriend at the time, Johnny Ryder.
Your boyfriend, Johnny?
Mm-hmm.
How long you date that dude for?
3 months.
3 months? Where'd you guys meet at?
I met him through the ex-boyfriend who sold my phone. Because they came to pick me up one day because we wanted to chill. Yeah, we stayed at a hotel. They paid for everything. They asked me if I wanted to come. I was yeah.
Johnny was 2 years older than Cassie. His mom was Japanese, but he'd lived in the US for most of his life and moved to the Atlanta area in the 3rd grade. He'd wanted to be a Marine, but suffered a shoulder injury and had to have surgery. This delayed joining up, and then he was arrested.
But I still haven't gone to court for it because they gave me like 8 felonies, but it's not supposed to be 8 felonies.
It's not clear exactly what Johnny was arrested for, but he spent some time in prison. In April 2017, he was only 19, but he had already been married to and divorced from a woman who wasn't Cassie Bjorge. He had dropped out of college to work a full-time job to support his wife.
My wife, my ex-wife, she used to go to University of Florida. So it's like a long distance marriage, you know. She's over here feeling neglected and depressed, and she thinks I'm cheating on her. Whenever she was a kid, like her dad beat her with chopsticks and forced her to do stuff like torture her mentally. This is why like I got kind of like down about it. And then me and my wife divorced, and then I found my girl now.
Johnny's relationship with his ex-wife had broken down as a result of distance and the wife's traumatic past. Cassie brought with her no less baggage, but she was new and exciting.
I don't know, maybe I'm just young and dumb in love, but...
Did you have feelings for him, or just kind of a boyfriend type thing, or?
I had feelings. I still have feelings for him.
I gotcha.
I care about him.
Johnny and Cassie were enamored with each other, but the real world was getting in the way. Cassie's grandparents' strict curfew and her constant fights with her grandma, and Johnny's ex-wife was also a problem.
He got married to like this crazy bitch, and then now she's like saying that I'm stalking her when I've only met the girl like twice.
Whether that's the truth or not, we don't know. What we do know is that Johnny and Cassie went off the grid in April 2017, after Cassie ran away from her grandparents' house. Wendy put out the Facebook post asking for help in finding her, and a week later, Wendy and Randall were dead. If Cassie wasn't with Johnny, maybe she would have disappeared into thin air, never to be heard from again, and no one would ever have known what happened to her grandparents. The police would have broken down the door to the house on Furlong Run eventually. They would have found Wendy and Randall's bodies, but by then Cassie might have been long gone. But together, Johnny and Cassie had a fantasy.
The plan was that we were both gonna get both of our families, and he was like, let's be Bonnie and Clyde.
On April 7th, the missing persons report was filed for Randall Bjorge. Almost exactly 24 hours later, the police were called to investigate an assault elsewhere in Lawrenceville. The caller was Tomoko Ryder, Johnny's mom, and the victims were Johnny's sister Mindy and her boyfriend Kevin. Tomoko called 911 as she was driving Mindy and Kevin to the hospital for their injuries. She told the police that Johnny, accompanied by an unknown female, had beat Mindy with a baseball bat and made threats to kill her and Mindy. When they arrived on the scene, the police found the house in disarray, with blood smeared on the wall and the door frame in the bathroom. The air was also full of noxious pepper spray. Tomoko told the cops that Mindy had called her because Johnny had come home for the first time in 2 weeks to steal from them. When she had confronted Johnny about it, he'd attacked her with bear spray and told the unknown girl to get a baseball bat.
And then all of a sudden he goes out and comes back in and just sprays us straight in our faces and starts hitting us and tells his girlfriend to go grab the bat. And I see her come in with the bat, and the first thing she does is hit me across my back.
The desperate struggle could have led to deadly consequences, but when Johnny and Mindy's mom arrived back home, Johnny and the unknown girl fled, leaving Tomoko to drive the victims to the hospital. Johnny had taken Mindy's car, leaving the car he'd arrived in the garage. This car was the Bjorge's Mazda SUV, and the unknown female was Cassie Bjorge. They were achieving their Bonnie and Clyde dreams, but leaving that car behind was a fatal mistake. The police connected it to the welfare checks they'd been asked to make at the Bjorges' home and realized that something was seriously amiss with Wendy and Randall. The Bjorges' house on Furlong Run was only 1.5 miles away. At 11:13 p.m. that evening, the police once again knocked on the door, and when they received no response, forced entry. The house had been ransacked. The bodies of Wendy and Randall were hidden away upstairs behind a door that was caulked shut. They had been beaten, just the way Mindy and Kevin had been. They had been stabbed, and their throats had been cut. Maybe that was what Johnny and Cassie had planned to do to Johnny's family as well, but thankfully they didn't get the chance when Tomoko came home early. Wendy and Randall were not so lucky. The police had already issued a warrant for Johnny's arrest after speaking to his mother. Now, with 2 dead bodies connected to Johnny and his then unknown girlfriend, it became imperative that they find him as soon as possible. The cops began a search for the car the pair had stolen from Mindy. At nearly 4 a.m. the following morning, they found it on a street a 20-minute drive away from the Bjorges' home. Cassie and Johnny were holed up inside a friend's apartment and refused to come out when the police told them to. The couple were considered dangerous, and for good reason, as they seemed to have killed 2 people and attacked 2 others. The police arranged a SWAT team, and at 12:13 p.m. on Sunday, April 9th, the SWAT team entered the residence and arrested Cassie and Johnny. The couple had attempted to kill themselves with stab wounds to the wrists. They were rushed to the hospital where their conditions were stabilized, and they went on to make full recoveries. So, what exactly had happened to Wendy and Randall, and why? The police interviewed and charged Johnny first.
You're charged with aggravated assault on your sister and her boyfriend. So we're here just to find out what the heck happened. Maybe they messed around with Cassie and you got upset, or maybe Cassie did something. I don't know. Well, there's more to the story too. We're homicide detectives, and we're also involved. We're working a double homicide with Cassie's grandparents.
Johnny asked for his lawyer and didn't give the police anything. He was already in serious trouble because of the attack on his sister and her boyfriend, and the police would be detaining him when he got out of the hospital regardless. But Cassie was much more forthcoming. She explained that after she'd run away from her grandparents' house, she and Johnny had been sleeping in his car, idling around town, and hanging out with their friends.
We were just all over the place, Bailey. We were just trying to find something to do.
So I guess when do you decide to go back to your grandparents' house in the middle of the night?
It was like a couple days after, like 2 or 3 days. At first, it wasn't my idea at first. He first asked me, "Are you afraid to die?" And I said no. And then I asked him, "Are you afraid to die?" And he said no. And he asked me, he was like, "Would you kill your grandparents?" You know, like I fought them, you know.
Cassie expressed that killing Wendy and Randall had been Johnny's idea, but she also described her frustration with her life with them, how all she wanted to do was get away.
When you guys met at the park, did he ever go over the actual plan on how you guys would do it or anything like that? Or
I was already figuring that I had a warrant or something that already violated probation. We started out like with, you know, what time should we go over to the house? How are we gonna do this? You know, like what materials do we need to, do this?
Cassie and Johnny arrived at the house when her grandparents were still up, so they lurked outside, waiting for the lights to go out. Wendy sent the fateful final text to her sister-in-law. "I'm going to bed soon. Maybe tomorrow will be better. All I can do is hope for the best and expect the worst. It shouldn't be this hard for any of us." And then she turned the lights out and went to bed, not knowing her murderous granddaughter was waiting right outside.
And we just stayed outside for a little bit longer just to, wait. And then I already had the keys to my house.
They attacked Cassie's grandparents with fists and a tire iron, subdued them, and tied them up with duct tape.
And Johnny asked me to go get some knives. So I got some knives from downstairs in the kitchen, and I got 3 big butcher knives.
After the murders, the couple acted fast to erase evidence. They took Randall's car and dropped off Johnny's car by a nearby park. They disposed of their clothing, and they poured bleach over the bodies before sealing the door to the room with caulk.
He just did that. He just decided to do that. He didn't tell me. I just watched him and I was just like, okay.
They used Wendy and Randall's money to order Chinese takeout and buy drugs and new clothes.
When you guys were at the park, and you were talking about kind of the plan, and you were talking about maybe getting out of town and stuff like that, starting your new life, starting over and whatnot.
Yeah.
How come you guys did stay?
The reason why we stayed in town was because the plan was we were going to get both of our families.
They'd intended to run off into the sunset together, all part of the Bonnie and Clyde fantasy. But Johnny's desire to kill his own family delayed them. They spent a whole week dawdling in the Bjorges' house, which they turned into a crime scene. And then when they did attack Johnny's sister and her boyfriend, it went horribly wrong.
Then that's why we went over to Johnny's house and we attacked his sister and her boyfriend. He wanted to kill his family.
Okay.
And then that plan, just going over to his house, kind of just like, it didn't work out at all.
Cassie was remarkably upfront with the investigators about everything they'd done, almost strangely casual. But there was something she hadn't said, something the investigators knew about.
You gotta take a look at that. That's you and him, right? Is that at your grandparents' house? It sure looks like the living room of your grandparents' house.
How would that be possible?
Who's taking that?
That couldn't be at my grandparents' house.
Cassie denied that there had been anyone else in the Bjorges' house after the attack on her grandparents. But here was video evidence of her and Johnny there, filmed by somebody else.
But once lying and stuff like that starts, I have a problem. I believe that there were people at that house. I'll be straight up, dude. We heard about a conversation that took place inside there where someone was bitching about the smell. And Johnny's like, no, dude, it's just sewage. There's a sewage problem upstairs.
The cops were concerned that there were more people involved in the killings. Cassie confessed that they had invited friends over to party in the house in the week following the attack, but she was adamant that they didn't know about the dead bodies lying just in another room.
No one knew. I told everyone that my grandparents left on vacation.
Did you text anyone on Grandma's phone,
Yes.
pretending to be Grandma?
Yes.
Cassie did everything to prolong the fiction that Wendy and Randall were still alive, including impersonating Wendy over text to her own family members.
It only seems that you're sorry you got caught, that you had people over after. You don't seem to be sorry that you killed your grandparents.
Maybe they would have gotten away with the first senseless attack, killing Cassie's grandparents, who had only ever tried to help her. But the second was their undoing. In 2018, they both received life sentences for the murders. They had both pleaded guilty, though each blamed the other for inciting them to kill. Cassie, having been only 17 at the time of the murders, was not eligible for the death penalty. But if Johnny had not taken a plea deal, he might today be on death row. It still isn't clear why these two committed such atrocities. There was no logical motive discernible, other than that they were troubled young people whose annoyance with their family members translated into horrible murder.
I mean, do you feel bad about what happened? Do you think she deserves what happened?
I mean, I feel terrible. I feel like the worst person on the planet. I just wanted to get away from all of that, I was so tired of dealing with my family.
What do you think about this awful story? Why did Cassie kill her grandparents? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, keep up with our channel, and we will see you very soon on The Decoder.